Hello everyone and welcome back to episode 7 of my Learn Latin series. Today we'll be covering the second conjugation of Latin verbs and also the imperative mood, which is a mood used to give commands, orders or requests. We'll also look at some simple Latin greetings as well. Before we get stuck in though, let's go over the answers to the previous episode. So first of all we have some Latin into English. The first one, Poeta reginae fabulam narrabat, translates as, the poet was telling a story to the queen. Now note that because there is some ambiguity in Latin language translations, you could have translated this as the poet of the queen was telling a story, or the poet was telling the story of the queen. I think this one makes the most sense, and as you learn more and more about the language and start adding more information to sentences, there'll be less ambiguity. But just so you're aware, any of those three would have been a correct translation. Ad Britanniam navigo means I am sailing to Britain, or I sail to Britain. In Gallia laboratis means you, plural, are working in Gaul. Agricola cum puella ambulat, the farmer walks with the girl. And sine mensa feminae cenant, the women dine without a table. And the English into Latin. The sailor lives on an island, is nauta in insula habitat. He will kill the farmers with arrows, agricolas cum sagittis necabit. I gave roses to the women and the girls, feminae et puellis rossa stabam. They love Italy but avoid Spain. Italiam amant, sed Hispaniam vitant. And finally, the women carried spears from Africa to Asia would be feminae hastas ex Africa ad Asiam portabant. Now hopefully you got most of those correct. If you haven't, don't worry. I intentionally make these translations quite difficult as a learning exercise. So if you have made any mistakes, try to figure out where you went wrong, or drop a comment down below and I'll try and get back to you. Okay, so now on to today's lesson. So today we'll be covering firstly the second conjugation. Now hopefully you remember that a conjugation is a group of Latin verbs which behave in a similar way grammatically. It's not that they necessarily share anything conceptually with one another, they simply share endings and behaviors. So we've already learnt about the first conjugation, which includes verbs that have an ending are, are, in their second principal part, the infinitive. So here's an example of a verb that you've learned already, laudo, laudare, laudavi, laudatum, which means to praise. Now second conjugation verbs end in ere, and it's important to note that that first e is a long e, so it has the sound ere. And this is important because third conjugation verbs, which you'll learn about next, end with a short ere, ere. So it's important to remember that it's a long ere sound. So here's an example of a verb that belongs to the second conjugation, and it is moneo, monere, monui, monitum, which means to advise or to warn. So let's go ahead and learn the endings for the second conjugation verbs. Just as a quick recap, these are the endings for the first conjugation in the present, so happening now, indicative, meaning that it's a simple statement, and active, so that the subject is the one conducting the verb. And the endings are o, as, at, amus, atis, ant. So if we take our sample verb, laudare, we know its first conjugation because it ends are in the second principal part, the infinitive. We take that away and we're left with the stem of the verb, laud, and then we can put that in front of each of these endings to make complete words. So laudo, I praise, laudas, you praise, laudat, he praises, laudamus, we praise, laudatis, you plural praise, and laudant, they praise. So let's take that away for now and look at the endings for the second conjugation, present indicative active. And they are first person singular eo, second person singular es, third person singular et, first person plural emus, second person plural etis, and third person plural ent. Now hopefully right away you can see that these are in fact very similar to the endings of the first conjugation. The only real difference is that you're swapping an a out for an e, and when the a is long, such as in as and amus, we get a long e in the second conjugation, as in es and emus. When it's short, such as in at and ant, it's also short in the second conjugation, as in et and ent. The only noticeable difference between the two is that the first person singular for the first conjugation is just a simple long o, whereas in the second conjugation it's eo, so you can pay particular close attention to that. So if we take a sample verb, like this one that we've just looked at, monere, we know its second conjugation because it ends ere. We take that away and we're left with the stem mon, and then we can put that in front of these endings and we get complete words for the second conjugation verbs. So moneo, I advise, mones, you singular advise, monet, she, he, or it advises, monemus, we advise, monetis, you plural advise, and monent, they advise. And if we bring back our first conjugation verb, laudare, you can start to notice the similarities and differences between the first and second conjugation. So the very ending of the word, the so-called personal ending, simply tells us who is conducting the verb, and that doesn't change throughout any of the conjugations in Latin. So we have o for I, s for you singular, t for he, she, or it, mus for we, tis for you plural, and nt for they. So the only thing that really changes is the middle part, which is, as I've already mentioned, an a in the first conjugation for the most part, and an e for the most part in the second conjugation. And again, the only thing to really look out for is that in the first person singular, it's an o for the first conjugation and eo for the second conjugation. So if you've already learnt your first conjugation endings, it should be very easy to memorize those of the second conjugation. So now that we've learned them for the present indicative active, let's have a look at other tenses. So first of all, the future. Now we've learned the future endings for the first conjugation. Those are abo, abis, abit, abimus, abitis, abunt. And for the second conjugation, they are ebo, abis, abit, abimus, abitis, abunt. So once again, you're just swapping out a long a for a long e. So it's really quite straightforward to convert from first conjugation endings to second conjugation endings. And if we look at the imperfect, the same holds true. So for the first conjugation, the imperfect endings you've learned are abam, abas, abat, abamus, abatis, abant. And in the second conjugation, they are ebam, ebas, ebat, ebamus, ebatis, ebant. And once again, you're simply exchanging a long a for a long e. So if we take our verbs from before and plug them in here, we end up with a fully conjugated verb in the present, future, and imperfect tenses. So I won't go through the whole of the first conjugation, but the second conjugation would go as follows. Moneo, I warn. Mones, you warn. Monet, he, she, it warns. Monemus, we warn. Monetis, you plural warn. And monent, they warn. In the future, monebo, I will warn. Monebis, you will warn. Monebit, he, she, it will warn. Monebimus, we shall warn. Monebitis, you plural will warn. And monebunt, they will warn. And for the past imperfect, monebam, I was warning. Monebas, you were warning. Monebat, she was warning. Monebamus, we were warning. Monebatis, you plural were warning. And monebant, they were warning. So let's now look at another couple of examples of second conjugation verbs just to really drill this home. So the first verb we'll look at is this one, terreo, terrere, terrui, territum, which means to terrify or to scare or to frighten. It's a great verb for practicing your R rolling with that long terrere. This picture is actually a sculpture of the Roman god of the underworld, Orcus, and it can be found in the Parco dei Mostri, or Park of Monsters, in Bomarzo in Italy. Now, we know this is a second conjugation verb because it ends ere in the infinitive, the second principal part, ere, with a long e. We remove that and we get ter, the stem, and we put that in front of these endings, and we get terreo, I scare, terres, you scare, terret, he scares, terremus, we scare, terretis, you scare, plural, and terrent, they scare. Terrebo, I shall scare, terrebis, you will scare, terrebit, she, he, it will scare, terrebimus, we shall scare, terrebitis, you plural, will scare, terrebunt, they will scare, terrebam, I was scaring, terrebas, you were scaring, terrebat, he was scaring, terrebamus, we were scaring, terrebatis, you were scaring, plural, and terrebat, they were scaring. Let's take another example verb. So this one, docio, docere, doqui, doctum, meaning to teach. And it's where we get the word doctor from, which originally meant a sort of teacher. Again, we know this is second conjugation because it ends ere. We remove that to get the stem doc, and we put that in front of these endings to make complete words. Docio, doces, docet, docemus, docetis, docent, docebo, docebis, docebit, docebimus, docebitis, docebunt, docebam, docebas, docebat, docebamus, docebatis, docebant. So hopefully that makes sense. You can try looking through a Latin dictionary, finding other verbs that have this infinitive ending ere, and try and fully conjugate them throughout the present, future, and imperfect tenses, just to make sure that you really know those endings well. Okay, now we can move on to the second part of the lesson, where we're going to cover the imperative mood. So far, we've only looked at the indicative mood, which is a mood used to issue simple statements, statements of fact like the poet loves the island or I am sailing to Greece, and also questions like who are you, what is your name. We haven't actually covered Latin questions yet, but they will be coming up in a video very soon. Now, by contrast, the imperative mood is a grammatical device used to form commands or requests. Things like sit down, follow me, or get better soon are all sentences which utilize the imperative mood, as well as one which you're probably very familiar with hearing on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. Now, the imperative mood is very easy to learn because it only has one tense, that being the present tense. You can't really command someone to do something in the past, and if you issue a command to do something in the future, for example, follow me in 3 days, you're still issuing the command now and specifying when the action should take place. If instead you said you will follow me in 3 days, that wouldn't be a command, that would just be the indicative future. The imperative mood can be active or passive, so in the sentence, listen to me, it's in the active voice because the person doing the listening is the person I'm directly addressing. But in the sentence, be cured by the goddess, that would be the passive voice because the person I'm speaking to isn't doing the curing, they're being cured. Although far and away the most common usage of the imperative mood is in the active voice. And the only time the imperative mood changes, the endings, they only change depending on the number of people you're addressing, whether you're addressing one person or 2 or more people. So let's have a look at those endings. For the first conjugation, the singular ending is a, and the plural ending is ate. For the second conjugation, the singular ending is e, and the plural is ete. So if we take a first conjugation verb, like laudare, which we've been looking at, the stem laud goes in front of these endings to give lauda and laudate, which both mean praise. But I would use lauda if I was just speaking to one person, and I would use laudate if I was speaking to multiple people. And we can put in nouns as the target of these instructions. So if I wanted to say praise the farmer, the word for farmer is agricola, agricolae, and I would use the accusative because the farmer would be the direct object of the command praise. The accusative of farmer is agricolam, so I could put that in the sentence and form lauda agricolam, praise the farmer, or laudate agricolam, if I was speaking to more than one person and asking all of them to praise the farmer. So note that when I say plural and singular, I'm referring to the number of people I'm giving the instruction to, the number of people I'm addressing, not the recipient of the verb. In both of these cases, farmer is in the singular. If I wanted to say praise the farmers, I would say lauda agricolas or laudate agricolas. And it's exactly the same for the second conjugation. So we take this verb monere, we remove the stem mon and put it in front of these endings, and we get monne and monete, which both mean advise. So if you think the farmer's been doing a lousy job and isn't deserving of any praise, you could say monne agricolam or monete agricolam, which means advise the farmer. And again, if I was addressing one person, I would say monne agricolam. If I was addressing two or more people, I would say monete agricolam. You can try it with another verb. So we've just learned this verb docere, which means to teach. And we can have doce agricolam, teach the farmer, or docete agricolam, all of you teach the farmer. So now we can put together what we've learned about the second conjugation and the imperative mood to learn some simple Latin greetings. So the first verb we'll look at is salveo, salvere, which means to be well or to be in good health. But when you use the imperative of salveo, you get salve, salvete, which means greetings or hello. Also note that this is a slightly unusual verb in that it only has two principal parts, salveo and salvere, instead of the typical four. You'll find that some verbs have fewer than four principal parts. If we look at these scenes below, the lady on the left might say, salve agricola, which means hello, farmer, and he might respond, salve o femina, which means greetings, O lady. Sometimes you can put the word o in front of the person that you're directly addressing. So in this case, salve o femina, but you can include it or not, it's optional. And the guy on the far right might be saying hello to all these sailors, and he would use the plural, salvete, because there's more than one sailor, so he would say salvete nautai. The next one we'll look at is valeo, valere, valui, valeturum, which again means to be well, but in the sense of to be strong. And vale, valete, gives us farewell or goodbye. So instead, these people might be saying vale agricola, goodbye farmer, or vale o femina, goodbye o lady. And the guy on the right might say valete nautai, meaning farewell sailors. And indeed it's interesting to note that farewell means the same, it means be well in English, but it's come to mean goodbye. And finally we'll look at aveo, avere, which again means to be well or to fare well, but the imperative ave, avete, means hail or I salute you. It was a much more formal sort of address. You wouldn't use it casually, but you would use it if you were addressing a commander or a general or the emperor himself. And perhaps the most famous usage of it is this phrase ave imperator, morituri te salutant, which Suetonius writes about in the life of the Caesars, where a group of participants who were about to take part in a mock battle for sport in front of an audience addressed the Emperor Claudius and said, Ave imperator, morituri te salutant, which means, Hail Emperor, those who are about to die salute you. In this particular painting by Jean-Léon Gérôme, it's not in fact the Emperor Claudius that they're addressing, but the Emperor Vitellius, and you can tell this because on his podium it says Vitellius Imp, which is an abbreviation of Vitellius Imperator, which means Emperor Vitellius. So the word imperator means someone who holds power or holds command, and it's where we get the modern English word emperor from. But it's also where we get imperative, as in the imperative mood, because it's a mood used to issue commands. Do you see how it all starts to come together? Okay, now I've covered a lot in this lesson, so let's just have a quick recap of what we've looked at so far. We've learned about the second conjugation of Latin verbs, which are identifiable as those that have a second principal part ending ere with a long e. And we've learned the endings for the second conjugation verbs in the present, future, and imperfect indicative active. We've then looked at the imperative mood, which is a mood used to give commands, orders, or instructions. And we've put those bits of knowledge together to learn some simple Latin greetings and farewells: salvere, valere, and avere. Now let's finish up by learning some new vocabulary. So these are the words that we've already covered so far this lesson. Moneo, monere, monui, monitum, which means to advise or warn. Terreo, terrere, terrui, territum, to frighten, scare, or terrify. Docio, docere, doqui, doctum, to teach. Salvio, salvere, to be well or in good health. Aveo, avere, again to be well or to fare well. And valleo, valere, vallui, valeturum, meaning to be strong or to be well. Let's learn some new second declension verbs. So we have placeo, placere, placui, placetum, meaning to please or to satisfy. And the reason the plus dat is there is because this verb doesn't take the accusative as its direct object, but it takes the dative. So some verbs do take the dative instead, and I'll mark those out by a plus dat in the vocabulary. Habeo, habere, habui, habitum, meaning to have, own, hold, or possess. Nocio, nocere, nocui, nocitum, meaning to harm, injure, or damage, this one also taking the dative. Video, videre, vidi, visum, meaning to see or perceive, and it's where we get the English words video and visual, visionary. Sedeo, sedere, sedi, sessum, meaning to sit. And here's a first conjugation verb, impero, imperare, imperavi, imperatum, meaning to command or order. And we've already kind of touched upon this with the imperative mood and imperator, and this verb also takes the dative. Another first conjugation verb, sto, stare, stetti, statum, meaning to stand. And finally we'll learn one new first declension noun today, which is janua, januai. It's a feminine noun meaning door. The word janitor comes from this, who is someone who holds the keys to and opens and locks doors. But also the first month of our year, January, comes from janua. And January can be kind of thought of as a door into the new year. Now I've highlighted some of these verbs because you'll see that these are irregular parts of the verbs. If we look at placere, habere, and nocere, they all follow the same kind of eo, ere, ui, itum pattern, so they would be regular second conjugation verbs. By contrast, these have irregularities, so vidi, visum, sedi, sessum are not the typical pattern. And this really highlights the importance that you need to memorize all four principal parts of a verb, because occasionally they won't follow the typical pattern that you're expecting. And also these three verbs all take the dative, so rather than putting the accusative as the object of these verbs, it would be the dative case that you would use. And it kind of makes sense if you think of it as being placere, meaning to be pleasing to someone, and nocere as being harmful to someone, and imperare as being issuing orders to someone. Now I am putting together a Latin vocabulary sheet, which I update at the end of every lesson. It looks something like this, and I've color-coded it just to help you memorize which verbs belong to which conjugation, which nouns belong to which declension. You can find the most up-to-date version of the vocabulary list in the video description down below. Okay, so now I'll give you some questions to test yourself. First of all, some Latin into English translations. So we have Nautae puellam terrebunt, Januam cum rossis et sagittis ornabam, Salve poeta, salvete puellae, ave regina, si valetis ad Italiam navigabimus, and Poeta fabula agricolis placet. So again, be careful of that verb placet there, because its object will be in the dative case. And now for some English into Latin, we have, if he makes a mistake, advise the farmer. Sit, girls. Stand, girls. The poet is sitting and will tell a story. I was teaching the sailors on the island. And the queen has arrows and spears. And I like to finish up every lesson with a Latin phrase and a bit of etymology. So the Latin phrase for today is si vales valeo, which you'll be able to translate now, having learned the verb valere and the conjugation si, meaning if. And the whole phrase translates to, if you are well, I am well. And this was a common way that Romans started their polite letters, by saying si vales valeo, or abbreviating it to SVV. A slightly longer version, si vale bene est ego valeo, meaning if you are well, it is good, I am well, would also be commonly seen, and that would be abbreviated SVBEEV. Our etymology for today is the word placebo, which many of you will know is it comes from the placebo effect, where something that doesn't have a physical reaction still induces some form of reaction because you believe it will. So for example, if I gave you a sugar pill and I said it was a painkiller and it took your pain away, that would be an example of the placebo effect. And now that you know the verb placere and how to conjugate it in the future tense, you'll be able to know that placebo means I will please, or I shall please. And it kind of makes sense because it's the effect is something that will please you. The opposite is in fact nocebo or nocebo, which is, for example, if you were given a pill and told it was cyanide, even though it was a sugar pill, and you started to feel unwell, that would be an example of the nocebo effect. And that comes from the verb nocere, meaning to harm or injure, which you've also just learned. So that pretty much covers it for this lesson. Next time I'll be looking at the perfect past tense, which looks at verbs that were completed in the past and are finished, things like I have loved, I have done. We'll be looking at some irregular nouns of the first declension, and covering the all-important verb to be. So hopefully you've enjoyed the lesson. If you have, please do drop a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps me out a lot. It helps me reach a wider audience, and it helps you stay notified of when I upload new content. And finally, I would like to just offer a huge heartfelt thank you to my patrons and everyone who's helped supported the channel and its growth. If you are interested in helping out, there's a link to my Patreon page in the video description, where for a small monthly donation you'll have access to several rewards, including private email addresses, video shoutouts, handwritten Latin letters, and access to Discord communities. There's also a link to my PayPal if you would like to just make a small one-off donation. So thank you so much to my current patrons, RAD, Ching Po, John P. Garden Jr., and David M. Linehan. Your support means the world to me. Thank you so much, guys. And with that, the lesson is at an end, so hopefully you've enjoyed yourself, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Walete.